Hey guys, tonight we're climbing up, way up, into one of the most dreamy, mythical, and questionably real places in the ancient world, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. You're waking up inside them, by the way. Vines are tangled above your head. There's the scent of jasmine in the air. And somewhere nearby, a parrot is muttering something wildly inappropriate in Akkadian. Welcome to paradise. You probably won't survive this, mostly because it might not have existed at all. But don't let that ruin your mood. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment with your location and what time it is right now. I love seeing where in the world you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stretch your limbs slowly, a thin silk sheet slipping off your shoulders as the early light sifts through braided ivy above your bed. The trellis you slept under is woven with blue morning glories, still curled shut from the cool desert night. A breeze drifts through, carrying the scent of crushed mint and watered stone. The sun hasn't fully risen yet, but it's bright enough to reveal the terraced garden's lush beauty. Orchids, palms, and flowering shrubs surround you like a living fortress. Somewhere below, a fountain bubbles to life, its sound soft and steady. You roll to your side and catch sight of it, just past the edge of the marble platform, where delicate stone channels run like veins through the greenery, feeding water to every corner. Water, precious in the heart of Mesopotamia, rises here thanks to ingenious engineering, possibly a chain pump system, or maybe the work of enslaved labourers turning hidden screws. Historians still argue whether these gardens were truly built in Babylon, or if the whole thing was misattributed from a similar wonder in Nineveh. But right now, none of that matters, because you're here on the top tier of the Hanging Gardens. And it's morning. A parrot squawks somewhere off to your left. "Who's your empress?" it demands, then follows with an undignified belch. You blink at it. The bird blinks back, entirely unrepentant. The garden is already coming alive around you. Birds flit between hanging fig trees and papaya branches, the air filled with their chirps and flutterings. From beneath a shaded awning nearby, a young servant sets down a copper tray of fruit and sweet milk. They nod silently and vanish back into the foliage. Barefoot and ghost-like, you sit up, your fingers brushing over a woven mat beneath you. Cool morning dew clings to the leaves nearby. Everything smells damp, green, and just a bit like sun-warmed clay. You scratch at your scalp, still tangled with sleep, and glance around at your surroundings. There's no room here in the normal sense. Your sleeping platform is bordered by stone planters bursting with lavender, lilies and creeping vines. Ferns spill over from upper tiers. The walls, forget about them. The horizon stretches out wide beyond the greenery, and just visible in the hazy distance is the great city of Babylon herself. Ziggurats, temples and bustling roads spreading like fingers from the centre of the world. You've heard of this place your whole life. This fantasy garden built by King Nebuchadnezzar II to please his wife, Ametis, who missed the green hills of her homeland. That's the romantic version anyway. Some scholars think she never existed. Others think the gardens were a PR stunt, like most Instagram stories. Carefully curated, rarely real. But again, none of that matters right now. Because you're hungry. You stand, bones creaking a little, yes, even in the ancient world, and stretch toward the heavens. Overhead, thick ropes run between terraces, supporting baskets of flowering plants suspended in midair. You pass beneath one, and it lightly drips on your shoulder, leftover rainwater from the night before. You taste it instinctively. It's cool and sweet, filtered through leaves, cleaner than your apartment's tap, probably. Around a bend in the terrace, the view opens wide. A sheer drop reveals the next garden level down, where banana trees and date palms cast shadows across long marble benches. A small bronze statue of a bull watches over a basin, where koi fish circle lazily, their scales flickering like tiny mirrors. You step carefully along the edge, gripping a carved balustrade for balance. The stone is warm under your fingers already, heat rising quickly from the sleeping desert. You take in the distant hum of Babylon waking up, chisel taps from a stone mason, the soft chant of priests greeting the sun, and the bleating of a goat who is very clearly not a morning person. A burst of sound makes you jump, a conch horn from the river below. That'll be one of the boats carrying grain or wine into the palace district. The Euphrates snakes past the city, wide and lazy, and many believe the garden's water system fed directly from it. The specifics are lost to time, but some argue it used Archimedes' screws, though Archimedes hadn't been born yet, which makes it awkward. Others suggest massive underground cisterns, or maybe even divine intervention, if you're into that kind of thing. You descend a short stair lined with mosaic tiles, each one hand-placed, showing scenes of lions, bulls, and mythical creatures dancing in a loop. At the landing, a stone bench invites you to sit, nestled between a lemon tree and a flowering bush you don't recognise, possibly extinct. You run your hand along the trunk, smooth bark. A few initials are carved into it, and one very detailed drawing of what looks like a flamingo in a chariot. The birds are louder now. One perches on a hanging chain used to lift water jars to higher levels. You're still marvelling at the engineering of it, all when the parrot returns, landing with a squawk and dropping something shiny at your feet. It's a small bead, glass, possibly Phoenician. You smile. A gift. Your stomach growls, loud enough that the parrot gives you a look. Fine, time for breakfast. You follow a winding path of sun-dappled stone, the patterns of light shifting with each passing leaf above. The hanging gardens don't wake all at once. Each tier, each corner, has its own rhythm. Some flowers bloom only in the mornings, others seem to sleep until sunset. Right now, it's that magical window where the dew still clings. The birds haven't gotten too obnoxious yet, and the sun is still playing nice. You pad barefoot down a shallow slope, lined with ivy and flanked by glossy pomegranate bushes. The stones are cool beneath your feet, still holding on to the memory of night. You stretch your toes, relishing it. This is a kind of luxury no mattress can buy. Cool stone warmed slowly by sun, kissed by breeze and time. The floor glimmers faintly with embedded flecks of quartz and crushed seashell, glittering here and there like spilled starlight. The scent changes as you descend. Fresh basil, sweet mint, a hint of fig. Your stomach growls again, louder now. You pass under an archway wrapped in flowering vines and spot the morning meal set out near a shaded table under a large fronded canopy. The table is carved wood, possibly cedar from Lebanon, expensive, imported, likely carried hundreds of miles on donkey back. It still smells faintly of resin. There's a tray of fig cakes, a bowl of pitted dates, and a plate of fresh flatbread, still steaming gently, wrapped in cloth. A small ceramic dish holds some kind of spread, tahini maybe, or a sesame honey blend. You sit cross-legged on a cushion that has no right being this soft, and immediately rip a piece of bread in half. Steam curls up, and the parrot from earlier suddenly lands on a branch just above you. "Share it!" it squawks. You stare up. "Get your own." It clicks its beak in protest and mutters something in Sumerian that you're pretty sure is not family-friendly. The bread is delicious. Earthy, yeasty, just a little tangy. You dip it into the honey sesame mixture and sigh. Yeah, you're definitely royalty now. There's also a chilled clay cup of goat milk infused with rosewater and cardamom. You sip it slowly, and the floral aroma lingers in your nose. There's no rush here. In the hanging gardens, everything unfolds at its own pace. A soft shuffle of footsteps alerts you to someone approaching. You glance over your shoulder. One of the palace attendants, mid-30s, tunic belted high, a blue sash that suggests they manage something important, smiles and gestures at the garden around you. "First time waking up here?" they ask, voice quiet but amused. You nod, your mouth full of fig cake. They nod in return. "Most guests get lost within the first hour. You're doing well." You swallow. "Where does the water come from?" They smile cryptically. "Up, down and sideways," they say, and wander off without another word. Classic Babylon. You lounge a bit longer after eating, brushing crumbs from your robe and watching a bee bumble through a hibiscus flower. Every few minutes, a small gust of wind rustles the fronds above you, carrying the faintest sound of laughter, maybe a flute. There's always music here somewhere, just as you're considering whether to lie back down or keep exploring. The soft slap of sandals returns. This time, it's someone new, an elderly man, bent slightly with age, his arms stained with what looks like damp soil. His tunic is plain but expertly folded. He has the relaxed authority of someone who's been here longer than the stone. "Walk with me?" he asks, not waiting for an answer before turning. You rise and follow him without question. The gardener. You move slowly through the lower terraces, where the humidity increases slightly thanks to a series of shallow water channels carved into the stone. Each planter is raised, overflowing, with herbs, vegetables, and medicinal plants you half recognise. Coriander, cumin, arugula, aloe, and something that smells suspiciously like garlic but looks like a mutant tulip. "The water," he begins, pointing to a half-exposed channel, "comes up through screw pumps, bronze and wood, turned by the river's current below, or by people paid in figs and fish, or both, on a good day." You nod. You've read about Archimedes' screw, except, again, he comes later. So who really invented this setup? Historians still argue whether it was Babylonian engineers who came up with the idea independently, or if the screw is just another invention retro-attributed later on by eager Greek chroniclers. Each plant has its mood, the gardener continues. Papyrus is dramatic. Basil is lazy. Date palms are the most honest. They take years to grow, but once they fruit, they won't stop. You chuckle, then ask, "What about orchids?" He stops walking, turns slowly. "Never trust an orchid." You're not sure if he's joking. His eyes twinkle just enough to keep it ambiguous. He leads you further up, past a tall patch of reeds. You almost don't notice the pulley system at first, because the vines have woven themselves so thoroughly around it. But it's there, a thick rope loop running through polished wheels, disappearing behind a wall of carved tiles. A clay jug hangs on one end, swaying gently as it fills a trough. "We keep the water moving," he says. "If it stands still too long, the frogs stage a coup." Frogs? Oh yes, the true rulers of Babylon. Haven't you heard the ribbiting at night? You grin. "I thought that was chanting." Same thing some days. You walk a little longer, absorbing the structure. Each planter is layered with gravel, soil, and pottery shards. Early versions of hydroponics. Some plants grow in stacked jars, others in cracked amphorae, reused as beds for rosemary and thyme. There's even a narrow pergola where grapevines twist along the beams, green clusters dangling inches from your head. You reach a small alcove where a shrine has been built, nothing fancy, just a clay bowl, a bird skull, and 3 yellow flowers placed carefully in a line. You pause. "To the goddess Gula," the gardener says softly, "healer of plants and sometimes people." You bow your head instinctively. There's a peacefulness here, a respect for life, even the inconvenient kind. Snails, beetles, birds that don't stop screaming. You continue your walk, and he stops beside a fig tree, tapping its bark lightly. "This one likes poetry," he murmurs. "Talk to it sometime. She's picky." You promise you will. Eventually, the gardener pats your arm and sends you off on your own. As you leave, you hear him muttering to a vine, asking it not to flirt so hard with the olive tree. It's already in a relationship. You shake your head, smiling, and make your way back to the upper paths. The The sun is climbing now. Warmth is settling into the walls. You're no longer just a visitor. You're part of the garden now too. You hear the clink of ceramic on wood before you smell it, the rich, warm scent of baked figs and roasted barley drifting around the curve of a trailing wall of bougainvillea. It's breakfast round 2, apparently, and your stomach has absolutely no intention of pretending it's still full. You step into a shaded courtyard where a table has been set beneath a broad-leafed papaya tree, its fruit hanging like heavy lanterns above. A pair of attendants glides silently away as you approach. Barefoot, always, their linen robes whispering against the polished floor. The table is low, surrounded by plush cushions, and already crowded with beautiful little dishes. There's a small clay jar of date syrup, wedges of soft goat cheese flecked with thyme, a bowl of cucumber slices dusted with salt, and, yes, another stack of those honeyed fig cakes that basically taste like what love letters would, if you could eat them. You plop down ungracefully, rearranging your robe in what you assume is a historically respectful way. You reach for a bit of cheese, drag it through the date syrup, and take a bite that makes your eyes roll slightly back into your skull. The sun filters through the papaya leaves in soft flickering shapes, and a breeze carries the sweet scent of lemon blossoms through the air. Nearby, a pair of gardeners argue softly, in Akkadian, about whether it's too soon to harvest the apricots. One gestures wildly toward the tree in question. The other folds his arms like a disapproving uncle. The apricots remain undecided. As you reach for a handful of pistachios, a small shape darts from the vines and lands on the cushion beside you. A monkey. A real one. Not some metaphorical Babylonian metaphor. It's tiny, wearing a gold-threaded collar, and looking at you like you owe it money. You pause mid-reach. The monkey gently lifts a pistachio from your plate, cracks it with unnerving elegance, and begins to eat it, slowly, maintaining eye contact the entire time. "Do you live here?" you whisper. It blinks, you blink. Then it's gone, vanishing back into the foliage like a polite but slightly menacing houseguest. Historians still argue whether the Babylonians kept monkeys as pets or as symbols of trade with India. There are scattered accounts in cuneiform texts that describe small men who chatter and steal fruit, which frankly could refer to either monkeys or poorly behaved nephews. Regardless, that little pistachio bandit just made your day. You return your attention to the breakfast spread. A small clay cup filled with something milky white catches your eye. You take a cautious sip and discover it's almond milk, infused with crushed cardamom and just a hint of rose. It's smooth, fragrant, and a strong contender for the most delicious thing you've tasted this hour. From your seat, you can see more of the terraced architecture that makes the hanging gardens so legendary. Raised beds and narrow walkways wrap around. Central stone columns, each tier supported by vaulted foundations below. Thick ropes hang at intervals, attached to baskets or pulley systems, one of which currently delivers a jar of olives from somewhere above you to an impatient-looking palace guard below. He catches the jar, shakes it like it owes him answers, then walks off muttering. You chuckle softly to yourself. A small bell rings in the distance, not urgent, not formal, just a tone like a temple bell that got distracted and decided to become decorative. It signals that the mid-morning water cycle has begun. Somewhere beneath your feet, one of the many systems of pumps and wheels has been engaged. You feel a faint vibration, almost like the garden is sighing contentedly. You watch as water begins to trickle gently from one of the carved lion head fountains nearby. The channels branch off in tiny rivulets, feeding into root systems and shallow decorative pools. You dip your fingers in one, the water surprisingly cold and clean. There's a small mosaic on the fountain's base, 2 stylized fish circling each other, ringed by symbols you can't quite read. Possibly a dedication to Ea, the god of freshwater and wisdom. Or maybe it's just ancient bathroom graffiti. Hard to tell. You take one last bite of your fig cake, soft, sticky, with just a hint of spice, and rise from the table. Your limbs are looser now, your belly full, your mind clear. As you stretch, a group of children rush past, laughing. They're led by a younger woman, wearing what looks like a teaching sash, beaded and dyed indigo, tied with a clay seal. They're pointing to various plants and shouting their names in two languages, Akkadian and something older, Sumerian maybe. One girl tugs on the woman's robe and asks, "What if the flowers get tired of blooming?" The teacher smiles. "Then we sing to them, or leave them alone." You walk a little slower now, past a patch of violets planted around a sundial. It's simple, made from polished bronze and a rough-cut pillar of limestone. You glance at its shadow, still early. Time seems less rigid here. It bends a little, stretches like warm taffy, or like your attention span on a Sunday morning. You turn a corner and come upon a resting area, a crescent-shaped bench carved from sandstone, its back covered in a mural of animals, lions, bulls, a strange two-headed goat. The craftsmanship is stunning. You run your hand over the surface, fingers tracing outlines that were shaped centuries ago, maybe even longer. As you stand there, appreciating the mural, a soft voice behind you says, "That goat's name is Shabushu." You turn. It's the same elderly gardener from earlier, now holding a basket of lemons. "She bites," he adds. "Don't believe her smile." You both share a look. Then he's gone again, vanishing into the vines like a botanical wizard. You make your way slowly up a shallow incline, lined with cypress trees, and a low stone railing that curves with the terrace's edge. The view opens wide. Babylon spreads below like a living map, mud brick rooftops, temple towers, distant cranes hauling wood for some new ziggurat. You even spot a small riverboat drifting lazily on the Euphrates, its sail decorated with what appears to be a very smug-looking rooster. There's a peace in this height, not just physical, but emotional. You're above the noise, above the dust and clamour of the world. Just you, the breeze and the garden. You pause beside a patch of thyme and lean on the warm stone, eyes half-lidded. Somewhere behind you, the monkey chitters again. You pretend not to hear it. You're learning. And as the warmth deepens, the garden opens its arms a little wider. The path ahead curves gently upward, disappearing behind a curtain of hanging wisteria. You move toward it, brushing your fingers against the lavender blossoms, their petals soft and fragrant, a little sticky with morning nectar. Bees bumble lazily past your ear, too busy with their own to-do lists to worry about yours. Somewhere in the foliage, a dove makes a noise like it's yawning dramatically. You relate. As you pass through the floral veil, you nearly bump into someone. He stooped over a raised planter bed, muttering to himself in a mix of Akkadian and garden gossip. White hair pokes out from under a floppy reed hat, and his elbows are deep in a tangle of creeping mint. "Oh," he says, looking up, "you again." The gardener, of course. He gestures toward a basket by his feet, half filled with soil-caked bulbs. "Walk with me, unless you're afraid of a little dirt," you grin. "I'm already barefoot." "Good," he mutters, straightening. "Shoes ruin the relationship." You're not entirely sure what that means, but you fall into step beside him anyway. He carries the basket now, occasionally pulling a leaf or twig out of it and tucking it behind his ear like it owes him rent. He leads you along a narrow walkway, bordered with lemongrass and purple sage. The air here is warm and fragrant, the sun filtered through layers of vines and pergolas overhead. Every few steps he stops to check a plant, pinching leaves, murmuring little blessings, and once scolding a wilting basil for being dramatic. "The aqueducts run just below us," he explains, pointing down toward the stonework beneath your feet. Gravity and clever hands, like water made a deal with the mountain. It's brilliant, really. The water is lifted from the Euphrates using massive chain pump systems powered by beasts or people, or both, and stored in high cisterns. From there, gravity does the rest. An elegant cheat code in a region where rainfall shows up about as often as a unicorn. Some say these gardens were only possible because of conquest, the gardener says suddenly, pausing by a shady pomegranate tree. Others say it was love. Either way, it's the slaves who did the heavy lifting, literally. The silence that follows is gentle but weighty. Truth hangs heavy in the garden air, like ripe fruit no one quite wants to pick. You nod, understanding that beneath every marvel is the muscle of the forgotten. And yet, this place sings, because someone made it so. Someone cared enough to turn a desert into a dream. He smiles, sensing your reflection, and changes the subject with the grace of a man who's pruned more than just plants. Come on, I want you to meet someone. You follow him around a corner, the stone turning cool again as you step into a more shaded area. This space feels quieter, cloistered, like a library of leaves, and sitting on a low stool, hunched over a small pot, is a boy. Maybe 12, maybe a very short 50, covered in flecks of ochre clay. This is my apprentice, the gardener says. He speaks to the vines in poetry. The boy looks up, squints, then nods at you solemnly. He goes back to work, sculpting, shaping something with remarkable care. It looks like a bird, wings outstretched, frozen mid-flight. He makes offerings, the gardener whispers, for the roots. You don't know if that's metaphorical or literal, and honestly, either answer is fine. You move on. The gardener doesn't say goodbye, he simply melts back into the green, humming something with no discernible tune. You continue your climb alone, the path now bordered by stone planters, overflowing with marigolds and clusters of strange spiny fruits you're pretty sure could kill you or cure you depending on ripeness. The air grows damper, cooler. You pause to take a breath near a pool where lilies float across the surface like tiny boats. The water is so still it looks like glass until a frog blinks slowly at you, completely unmoved by your presence. You crouch and trail your fingers along the edge, dipping them just enough to disturb the mirror. A ripple glides across the surface, and a small school of golden fish flits through the lilies in response. You sit on a nearby stone bench, letting the sound of trickling water and distant bird calls lull your brain into a light fuzz. It's that mid-morning dream state, when the coffee is worn off, but the sun hasn't yet bullied you into doing anything productive. You close your eyes. Then honk. Your eyes snap open. Standing not 5 feet from you is a goose, a sacred one, if its bejeweled collar is to be believed. It eyes you suspiciously. You eye it back. I come in peace, you whisper. It honks again. Steps closer. You toss a piece of bread you've forgotten you were holding. The goose considers it, picks it up, honks again, then waddles off with a distinct air of superiority. You sigh in relief. A peaceful garden, yes, but even paradise has bosses. Geese were sacred to several Mesopotamian deities, symbolizing fertility, guardianship, and being just the right amount of terrifying. There are even stone carvings of them guarding temples, beaks open mid-honk, as if warning future archaeologists not to get too comfortable. You rise and resume your stroll, brushing a few fallen goose feathers off your tunic. The walkway leads you across a narrow bridge of polished stone, beneath which water flows in a quiet channel toward a lower reservoir. In the distance, a bell tolls again, marking either the half-morning or just someone's snack time. Babylonian clocks were more art than science. You pause beside a bed of papyrus, their tall green stalks swaying softly. Scribes used to harvest these to make scrolls, laboriously flattened, pressed, dried. A single mistake, and a whole day's work crumpled like a bad tweet. No backspace key in 605 BCE. Your gaze drifts upward to the upper tiers of the garden, partially visible now through the canopy. The terraces stack like a ziggurat, softened by time, layer after layer of green, framed by archways and staircases. Somewhere up there, rare orchids bloom, birds nest in elaborate reed towers, and Queen Amethyst herself might be sipping rosewater and missing her homeland a little less. You'll get there soon, But for now, the stone beneath your feet is warm. The water sings, and your fingers still smell faintly of mint and goose terror. You round one last corner and catch sight of a mural set into the wall, a scene of two lovers reclining beneath a tree. The paint is chipped in places, but the detail is hauntingly good. One of them is holding a flower, the other a cup. Their eyes meet forever. You smile and keep walking. The morning's still young, and the garden has more stories to tell. You follow the sound of laughter, soft, bubbling, unmistakably childlike. It weaves through the air like music, light and unpredictable. It leads you to a glade-like clearing framed by cascading ivy and wide-leafed banana plants. In the centre, a shallow stone pool filled with lily pads and tiny darting fish, their scales flashing like slivers of polished bronze. The water's edge is lined with carved tiles, their surfaces warm underfoot and decorated with leaping dolphins, lotus blossoms, and what appears to be a frog with a unibrow. You ease down onto the edge of the pool, feet dangling into the cool water. It feels like slipping your legs into the smooth belly of the sky. The garden's heat disappears below the knee, refreshing and startling all at once. A dragonfly skims the surface, its wings glittering like stained glass. Nearby, two young children toss pebbles to try and land them perfectly on lily pads. Judging by the splash radius, they have about a 30% success rate. The older one cheers every hit like it's an Olympic gold. The younger one sulks theatrically with each miss, future poet clearly. Behind them, a nanny, or older sibling, watches with the deeply practiced apathy of someone who's been doing this since dawn. They catch your eye, raise one eyebrow, and return to braiding reeds without a word. The sacred geese, unfortunately, are back. A trio of them waddles over from a nearby planter, eyeing the children, then you. One hisses softly, as if to remind everyone that serenity is a fragile illusion. You keep your toes tucked firmly beneath the water. They can't get you in there. Probably. Despite the geese, the atmosphere here is pure delight. The children laugh again, this time because one of the fish has apparently decided to nibble at their toes. You lean back on your elbows, letting your shoulders relax, your eyes drifting up to the vine-draped pergola above. A few birds flit between the beams, chirping and squabbling like tiny feathered politicians. And just when you think the moment can't get any better, you hear a low rhythmic sound. Splish, splish, splash. You turn. From the foliage emerges a palace servant holding a long-handled scoop. He dips it into the pool and flings a splash of water into the air. Not at anyone in particular, just skyward. The arc catches the sun like a falling gem, and a few droplets mist your face. It's cool, gentle, and vaguely lemon-scented. Water play is for the lilies, he says simply. But sometimes we share. You smile, and he disappears with the same quietness he arrived. A butterfly lands on your knee. You both pause, acknowledging each other. It flaps its wings twice, then lifts off, as if to say, "Nice chat." You glance into the water again, noticing how clearly the sky reflects in its surface, so much so that the dividing line between garden and heaven seems negotiable. Ancient Babylonian poems spoke of sacred pools as mirrors for the gods, places where celestial beings could admire themselves when they got bored of eternity. That's one theory anyway. Historians still argue whether these pools had religious significance or were just really fancy bathtubs. There are whispers that some were filled with perfumed water during ceremonies, jasmine, myrrh, or even saffron, and that during the summer solstice, high priests would pour oils into them and light floating lamps to honour Ishtar, the goddess of love and war. A confusing combination, but hey, multitasking is timeless. You trail your fingers through the water, tracing lazy spirals. One of the lily pads quivers, and you realise a tiny frog has hopped onto it. It blinks at you. You blink back. You're not sure what kind of interspecies communication just happened, but it feels respectful. The breeze shifts. Somewhere nearby, a musician plucks a string instrument, soft and slow, like it's being played by someone half asleep. You let the sound wash over you. It doesn't demand attention, it's just there, part of the garden's heartbeat. You lean back again, this time fully reclined, arms spread, toes still in the pool. The sun has climbed higher but remains dappled by thick leaves above, offering just enough warmth without roasting your bones. You think about the stories about how Nebuchadnezzar built all of this to ease his queen's homesickness. A mountainous green haven in the middle of a sun-baked city. Some say he never did, that the whole thing was a misread Greek exaggeration. But here, with lily pads brushing your ankles and music in your ears, it's hard to believe anyone wouldn't build something this lovely if they could. Another splash. This time, it's from the children, who've decided to start a game that seems to involve seeing who can get the goose wetter without losing a finger. One of them grabs a palm frond and waves it like a sword. The goose is unamused. You scoot back from the pool, just in case you're drafted into this conflict. At the edge of the glade stands a low wall, carved with images of stylized rivers and winged fish. You step toward it, run your hand over the smooth stone. The fish have faces, oddly cheerful ones, possibly drunk. Etched in between the river waves is a line of cuneiform. Hard to read, partially worn. But a nearby plaque has a faint inscription. The river rises and falls, but always returns to sing. You nod to yourself. Not bad for an ancient graffiti tag. Suddenly, something thwacks into your side. You yelp, look down. It's a clay toy boat, slightly cracked but still floating. One of the kids waves at you sheepishly, clearly misfired. You smile, wade in, and nudge it gently back their way. You stay a little longer, watching the way the water glimmers and shifts. Everything feels softened here. Sounds, light, even time. The pool doesn't reflect the world. It dilutes it into something gentler, quieter, dreamlike. You close your eyes again, just for a moment, and imagine this spot as it once was, or maybe still is. A living, breathing Eden. A place built not for power or conquest, but for stillness. For toes in water, for frogs, figs, and mischievous geese. Eventually, you rise and shake off your feet, the water clinging to your skin in delicate rivulets. The sun warms them instantly. You head back to the main path, passing the nanny, who now has both children and geese under some semblance of control. As you leave the lily pool behind, you hear the boy shout, "That frog blinked at me," and the nanny replies without missing a beat, "He liked your song. Don't ruin it." You walk on, smiling. You follow a gentle stone incline, the garden's tiers lifting you toward a wider balcony, flanked by date palms and flowering oleander. As you step onto the open platform, a sudden burst of golden movement catches your eye. Far below, just past the curtain of vines and aerial roots, the royal road, and on it, the unmistakable shimmer of gilded wheels. It's a parade, or at least something parade adjacent. You lean against the carved balustrade, its surface sun-warmed and slightly uneven from centuries of wandering hands. Below, the avenue of processions stretches like a dusty ribbon through the heart of Babylon. And moving along it, in typical royal fashion, is King Nebuchadnezzar, the second ceremonial chariot. You know it's his because of the large gold-plated lion figurehead mounted to the front, roaring bravely despite missing one eyeball and a significant portion of its lower jaw. The king himself isn't visible. He's probably cloistered behind the veils of the carriage, but the guards surrounding the chariot are unmistakable. Tall, armour glinting in the sun, spears upright, and sandals that absolutely cost more than your entire garden outfit. Behind them shuffle temple musicians, their long lutes bouncing against their backs, followed by dancers in shimmering linen tossing rose petals into the crowd. Or at least trying. One of them dramatically hurls petals into the air, only for them to gust straight back into her face. She blinks furiously, unbothered. A professional. A cluster of priests trail behind, carrying statues of various gods. Marduk, of course, with his big square beard and furrowed brow. Ishtar, dazzling and slightly terrifying. Nabu, the god of writing, holding a stylus like he's about to correct your grammar mid-prayer. The crowd lining the street is loud and rowdy, shouting blessings, demands, insults. It's a mix. Babylon doesn't do subtle. You can hear vendors hawking wine and grilled onions between chants. One kid is chasing a goat wearing a wreath of flowers. The goat is losing patience. The parade below is beautiful chaos. From this height, though, it's like watching history through glass. Removed, serene. The terraces around you are quieter. Only a few attendants pass by, each carrying baskets of grapes or scrolls, or both. You shift along the balcony for a better angle and catch sight of the chariot, again, as it rounds a bend, only for the left front wheel to wobble. Visibly. You lean in. Yep, it wobbles again. Then, with an almost poetic lurch, the golden wheel hubcap pops off entirely and goes rolling down the road, where it's immediately snatched by a boy who disappears into the crowd, like a ghost. You don't know whether to be concerned or impressed. Probably both. Somewhere to your left, a low voice chuckles. You glance over. A palace guard, tall, sun-browned, leaning on a pike like it's a walking stick. He's watching the parade too, one eyebrow raised. Fourth time this month, he says. That chariot's cursed. Or poorly maintained. Same thing in Babylon. You share a smirk. The parade stumbles slightly, as attendants scramble to realign the wheel. The crowd cheers anyway, because if Babylon is anything, it's committed to spectacle. You let your eyes wander again. Beyond the city's rooftops, the Euphrates glints in the sun, winding its way like a lazy serpent through the desert. Traders and fishermen move along its banks, their sails catching the wind, their shouted bargains just faint echoes from here. To your right, the Ishtar Gate looms in the distance, its blue-glazed bricks shimmering with images of dragons and bulls. A marvel of ancient architecture. And yes, it is as dramatic as people say. Historians still debate whether it marked the entry to paradise or just the royal kitchen district. Either way, it slaps. The wind shifts. From the garden above, the scent of jasmine and ripening melons drifts down, mingling with the dust and spice of the city below. You close your eyes and breathe it in. Babylon in a single breath. Grit, perfume, ambition, and the occasional goat. You step back from the railing and move toward a small stone bench beneath an archway. A servant passing by offers you a cool cloth and a cup of pomegranate juice without saying a word. Efficient. You sip, the tartness sharp on your tongue. There's a scroll tucked beneath the bench. Curiosity wins. You unroll it. It's not a royal decree. It's a poem. Handwritten. A little smudged. The lines are about a girl who danced under fig trees and stole honey with her bare hands. It ends abruptly with the phrase, "She left the door open, so the moon came in." You reread it twice. You tuck the scroll back under the bench for the next wanderer. That feels right. Above you, a palm frond flutters like a lazy flag. You rise and begin to climb again, heading toward the higher terraces. The stone steps are worn smooth from centuries of sandals, bare feet, and probably at least one drunken camel. As you ascend, the city below starts to disappear, behind greenery, replaced by the hush of leaves and bird calls. Somewhere, water rushes through a series of small aqueducts, feeding more unseen gardens. You pass a shrine built into the wall, just a recess with a carved figure of a lion-headed spirit. You pause, place a hand on the stone. It's warm, comforting. Somewhere behind you, the parade continues, horns blaring, drums pounding, sandals slapping cobblestones. But here in the garden, the sound is softened, blurred, like distant thunder or an old memory. And then, as you crest the final step, you're hit with a sudden, startling view. The upper terrace, not the highest, but close. And it's glowing. Sunlight spills across rows of trees and flowering vines, their leaves glinting like emeralds. Water flows in narrow channels through the stone, disappearing beneath the roots of plants so lush they look painted. You take a deep breath. You've left the city behind. You step into the upper terrace and immediately feel it. The temperature drops a few degrees, the air turning fragrant and moist, as though the plants themselves are exhaling in relief. Here, high above the city's dust and shouts, everything feels slower. Time itself seems wrapped in ivy. This isn't just a garden, it's an explosion. The path ahead winds between beds of flowering herbs and bursts of fruit-laden trees. Grapevines drape overhead, forming natural tunnels of shade that flicker with patches of sunlight. The silence here is different than below. Not absence, but softness. No chariots, no merchants, no chanting. Just the rustle of leaves, the occasional flit of bird wings, and a very relaxed bee struggling to choose between two equally tempting blossoms. You reach up as you walk, trailing your fingers along an arched vine overhead. It's heavy with tiny yellow orchids, delicate, trembling with every whisper of breeze. Some hang like stars, others like little tongues. The whole air smells faintly sweet, like honey mixed with pepper and something else, something you can't name. You pause beneath a towering pomegranate tree. Its branches bow under the weight of ripening fruit, so swollen and red they look like they're about to burst from the pressure of their own juice. One of them pops quietly, leaking a single line of ruby down its side. You resist the urge to lick it, barely. Across from you, a series of planters overflow with plants you don't recognize. One has curling violet leaves that shimmer slightly in the sun. Another grows in a clay amphora cracked along the side, probably repurposed after a wine-related accident. You're learning that in the hanging gardens, nothing is wasted, and everything has its place, even if it's clinging to the outside of a cracked jar like a botanical daredevil. You move deeper in. A palm-sized lizard scampers across your path, pauses, does 3 incredibly aggressive push-ups, and vanishes into the undergrowth. You salute it. Respect. A nearby gardener, young, shirtless, and utterly uninterested in your presence, balances on a narrow stone ledge, trimming vines with a curved knife. He whistles softly, a simple tune that bounces off the walls and seems to coax the plants to lean just a little closer to him. You try to remember the melody. It slips from your memory like water. The upper terrace was said to contain the rarest specimens in the entire empire. Plants brought from Persia, India, even distant Egypt. Cypress and cedar, jasmine and frankincense, possibly even cinnamon, though historians still argue whether real cinnamon made it this far inland, or if it was just a very enthusiastic cassia knockoff. Either way, it smells fantastic. You duck beneath a low-hanging branch heavy with orange blossoms and come face to face with a cluster of hanging melons. They sway slightly in the breeze, and one of them creaks ominously on its vine. You sidestep, just in case. Last thing you need is to be flattened by a rogue cantaloupe. The path leads to a stone platform at the terrace's edge, where a large clay basin sits bubbling quietly with fresh water. A marble bench curves around it, and perched right in the centre of that bench, cross-legged, sun-kissed, and completely absorbed in his sketching, is a young man with a stylus and a wax tablet. He doesn't look up when you approach, just says, "Don't step on the hyacinths. They're dramatic." You glance down. There they are, vibrant purple, possibly glaring at you. The man finally glances your way. "You're new," you nod. "I've been wandering." "Everyone does here," he says, shrugging, "until they find something that feels like their own." He scratches a few more lines into the wax and then, without warning, holds the tablet up to you. It's a rough sketch, but it's of you, reclining by the pool from earlier, with the sacred goose glowering in the background. You raise an eyebrow. "You work fast," he smirks. "I draw what the garden remembers." And with that very cryptic statement, he goes back to sketching. You take a seat nearby, listening to the water bubbling in the basin and watching the light filter through rows of grapevines above. From here, the view extends not just over the city, but across the entire horizon. Sun-scorched plains, a glinting river, faraway ziggurats softened by heat and haze. If the Hanging Gardens really were built to make Queen Amytis feel at home in a foreign land, this would be the view she longed for. Mountains may not be visible, but the green, the stillness, the height, this is elevation in every sense. And yet, like all things human, the upper terrace isn't just about beauty. In one corner, you find a strange, shriveled vine growing in a protected alcove. The gardener earlier might have forgotten about it, or maybe not. Its leaves are faded, curling inwards, but someone has stacked small stones around its roots, carefully, almost lovingly. You kneel beside it. There's a shard of pottery pressed into the soil beside the vine. On it, crudely etched, still growing, you feel a lump rise in your throat, and you don't know if it's the heat or the sheer, gentle hope of that phrase. This place, so grand, so fragrant, so filled with divine indulgence, still has space for a tired, struggling little plant. You continue walking, brushing your fingers against hanging fronds, ducking through a stone arch where white blossoms rain down in a slow-motion cascade. Somewhere beyond, you hear the parrot again. "Who's your empress?" it calls. You don't answer, but you smile. As you near the end of the upper terrace path, a vine thick with trumpet flowers shivers as a hummingbird zips out, its wings a blur of motion and arrogance. It pauses just long enough to hover in front of your nose, staring with a suspicion usually reserved for TSA agents. Then it zooms off, again disappearing into the sunlight like a tiny diver. And then you're there, at the top of the terrace in a clearing of soft moss and quiet stone, where everything stills. No birds, no bugs, no wind, just a moment. One that doesn't ask anything of you, except to feel it. You sit. The pomegranate above you splits again with a soft pop. You don't flinch. You just close your eyes and breathe. A warm breeze rolls through the clearing, gently rustling the vines overhead and carrying with it a low musical hum, almost like someone tuning a harp using honey and daydreams. You follow it, your footsteps padded by moss and scattered petals, until it leads you toward a shaded alcove framed by two tall cypress trees. There's a stone arch here, carved with geometric spirals and stylized birds mid-flight, and just beyond it, a low open-air room wreathed in vines. At the centre of this leafy space, sitting cross-legged on a cushion with a tablet balanced on his knee, is a man. His robe is dyed with indigo and trimmed with embroidered cuneiform lines that shimmer slightly in the dappled light. His beard is long and divided into 3 neat braids. He looks up as you enter, eyes twinkling behind ink-stained fingers. "I hope you weren't followed," he says with mock seriousness. "The baboons from the astronomy tower keep trying to steal my metaphors." You blink. "There are baboons in the astronomy tower?" He sighs dramatically. "They were meant to be symbolic. They became literal. No one is safe." You laugh and he gestures to a cushion across from him. "Sit, unless you've sworn an oath never to listen to poetry before lunch." You drop onto the cushion, the woven reeds beneath you warm and springy. The air here is thick with the scent of marjoram and crushed lemon leaf. Somewhere behind the vines, a fountain trickles lazily, like it's been gossiping all morning and is now tired of talking. "I'm supposed to be writing a hymn to Marduk," the man says, tapping his stylus against the edge of the wax tablet. "Instead, I've written 14 love poems to a woman who only ever walked past me carrying onions. Were they good onions?" "The best," he sighs. He scratches another line onto the tablet, muttering under his breath. Then, without warning, he clears his throat and begins to recite. "She walks like moonlight over irrigation ditches. Her eyes are like twin lentils of divine confusion. I offered her my finest goose feather quill. She took the onion instead." You clap politely, trying not to laugh through your nose. He bows slightly, then smirks. I'm Scylla, he says, official poet in residence, an unofficial provider of bad advice and excellent tea. You? You give your name, though it hardly matters here. This place exists somewhere outside names and roles, where gardeners speak to vines and monkeys eat your breakfast. First time in the gardens? He asks. You nod. He tilts his head. Strange, isn't it? A place built from legend, stitched together with myth and aqueducts. Historians still argue whether it was even here at all. You're not helping the illusion. He grins. That's the point. The gardens aren't about certainty. They're about possibility. You lean back slightly, glancing at the way light filters through the hanging foliage. So how'd you end up here? I won a poetry contest, he says. Well, that's what I tell people. Truthfully, I fell asleep in a grain storage room during a festival and woke up here. They thought I was a royal scribe. I haven't corrected them. You stare at him. He shrugs. Best mistake I've ever made. He pours you a cup of something warm and fragrant from a small clay teapot. You sip it. It's like cinnamon, mint, and something slightly floral, perhaps hibiscus. Comforting? Complicated? Much like your host. Would you like to try writing something? He asks, pushing a fresh wax tablet toward you. I don't. Everyone's a poet in the gardens, he says. Some people just haven't had enough tea yet. You hold the stylus awkwardly, staring at the blank tablet. The wax is soft beneath your touch. You scratch out a hesitant line. Something about a pomegranate, a parrot, and the eternal suspicion of geese. Scylla reads it, nods gravely. You've captured the core Babylonian emotional spectrum. Hunger, confusion, and mild fear. You spend a little while longer with him, crafting nonsense verses, sipping tea, and listening to him mutter complaints about how no one respects a proper enjambment anymore. He recites another poem, this one older, sharper, a Sumerian hymn to the goddess Inanna, who is part beauty, part battle cry. She, the morning star, crushes lions beneath her sandals and weeps for the fig tree she accidentally stepped on. Was that literal, you ask? With Inanna, he says, always assume yes. Eventually he grows quiet, gaze distant. These gardens, he says softly, they aren't just plants and stones. They're memories pretending to be rooted. The king built them for love, but they've become something else entirely. He pauses. Some days I think we're all just guests of a dream that refuses to end. You don't know how to respond to that, so you don't. You just sit with him a little longer, the hush of the room wrapping around you like a soft robe. When you finally rise to leave, he offers you a folded scrap of palm paper. What is it? You ask. Today's poem, he says. Not your best, but honest. You smile. He waves you off like a bothersome butterfly and returns to his tablet, already lost in another metaphor, possibly involving goats. As you step out of the alcove and back into the sun-drenched garden paths, you unfold the little scrap and read your poem again. It's ridiculous, it's sincere, and it's yours. You tuck it into your sleeve. Somewhere, a bird shrieks like it's discovered existential dread. You keep walking. The path curves again, narrow and uneven now, bordered by tall banana trees, whose massive green leaves sway softly in the breeze, like slow-moving fans. You follow it until the garden opens into a quiet courtyard nestled between two vine-wrapped columns. There's a table here, modest, circular, carved from pale stone, and etched with concentric rings that might be decorative or might be some obscure astronomical calendar. You can't tell. The bananas overhead aren't talking. Seated at the table, robed in layers of ivory linen, is a woman. Her hair is braided back with thin strands of silver thread, and there's something about the way she holds her posture, relaxed yet centered, that makes her feel more like a mountain than a person. Welcome, she says without looking up. Her voice is calm, smooth, and carries the weight of someone who knows she doesn't have to raise it to be heard. You hesitate. She gestures to the seat across from her. Come, the lentils are still warm. And they are. A simple bowl rests between you, filled with gently steaming lentils, seasoned with garlic and coriander, and somehow mystery. A few slices of barley bread lie nearby, toasted just enough to be fragrant without being fussy. No golden goblets here, no jewels, just lunch. "I'm Enhet," she says, "priestess of Gula, or sometimes of Nisaba. Depends on who needs what." "Double booked," she smiles faintly. "Aren't we all?" You eat. It's good, simple, but nourishing in a way that makes your insides feel steadier. The bread is crusty on the outside, soft in the centre. The lentils melt on your tongue. There's a small clay pot of pickled onions you weren't expecting, but they add just the right amount of punch. A priestess who understands seasoning is a gift. "You've come far," she says, "though I don't mean distance." You nod slowly, swallowing. "This place, it doesn't feel real." "It isn't," she says, pouring water into your cup. "That's the point." You sip. Cool, faintly citrusy. You're starting to suspect everything in the gardens is subtly infused with something herbaceous and mysterious. "Most guests come looking for proof," she says, resting her chin on one hand. "That the gardens existed. That Nebuchadnezzar truly built them for his queen. That the water system was mathematically possible. That humans can make paradise if they just try hard enough." She pauses, reaching for a small bunch of grapes. But truth is slippery here. The more you try to hold it, the more it grows wings. You pick at a piece of bread and glance around. The courtyard is wrapped in quiet greenery. Banana fronds overhead, aloe and ginger plants along the walls, and an enormous papyrus plant growing from a sunken stone basin just to your left. A hummingbird buzzes by and hovers for a second near the priestess's shoulder, as if checking in. Some say the gardens were built by the Assyrians, not Babylonians, she continues. Others claim they were never real at all, just a poetic fantasy from Greek travellers drunk on wine and dust. Historians still argue whether the confusion lies in translation, in location, or in the very human urge to dream big and exaggerate bigger. "And what do you believe?" you ask. She smiles again. "I believe they exist whenever someone needs them to." A pause then. "And also, someone definitely built that aqueduct." "I've seen the blueprints." She tears off a piece of bread and dips it into her lentils. Faith doesn't need facts to function, but facts enjoy being invited to the party. You finish your lunch in companionable silence. The breeze drifts through again, rustling the papyrus leaves in a way that sounds almost like whispering voices. You're about to ask if the wind here is also sacred when the priestess sets down her cup and gestures toward a small alcove behind her, partially hidden by a curtain of jasmine. "I want to show you something." You follow her through the curtain, brushing aside soft blossoms as you enter a low, cool chamber with a sunken floor. The air here is thicker and the smell is sharper. Frankincense, myrrh, a bit of aged stone. Clay votive figures line the edges, small palm-sized depictions of deities and spirits. Some are detailed, others little more than vaguely humanoid blobs with smudged faces and lopsided feet. "These are offerings," Enhet says, "left by those who wanted healing, or forgiveness, or hope." You bend down to look at one. It's a tiny goat with 4 horns and one very surprised expression. "That one worked," she says. "The woman who left it gave birth 2 weeks later. Twins." "Are 4-horned goats a fertility symbol?" "Number. That's just how her son sculpted it." You smile. She picks up one of the figures, a smooth, featureless face with long arms and wings folded back. "This one is for dreams. It keeps nightmares from nesting." "Do they nest?" She looks at you. "Only if fed." You gently set the figure back in its place. As you turn to leave, Enhet places a small object in your hand. A tiny clay bead shaped like an eye. "For protection," she says, "from lies, sharp stones, and decisions made in hunger." That covers most of your life. Back in the courtyard, the sun has shifted. The banana leaves overhead cast broader shadows now, and somewhere in the garden a flute begins to play, soft and slow, the kind of song that gets stuck in your soul more than your head. Enhet sits again. You linger. She gestures to the garden around her. Most people come here looking for Babylon. What they find is themselves. Philosophy or warning? Yes. You laugh, rising from your seat. Your limbs feel lighter now, your belly full, your heart weirdly quiet. Thank you, you say. She nods. Go gently. The garden is watching. You walk, back toward the path. Behind you, the priestess hums softly, some old song from a time before memory. The sound follows you for a while, then fades into leaves and breeze. And as you pass under the archway of vines once more, a papaya drops from a tree and lands with a thud inches from your foot. You stare at it. The garden chuckles somehow. Message received. You wander uphill again, deeper into the garden's interior, your footsteps muffled by layers of fallen petals and soft moss. The stone path narrows, flanked by cascading vines and hummingbird trap flowers, bright, flamboyant, and unapologetically extra. You're not quite sure where you're going, but the sunlight is just warm enough, the air just fragrant enough, and your belly just full enough that you don't really care. A cluster of hammocks appears ahead, swaying gently between polished wooden posts under a canopy of trailing wisteria and bougainvillea. Their fabric is silk, dyed in soft earthy hues, strung high off the ground like hammocks for gods who like altitude. A few are already occupied. A young man in one, clearly asleep and drooling heroically onto his collar. An elderly woman in another, swaying while plucking absently at a handheld harp with half its strings missing. You approach one of the empty hammocks, unsure. A nearby attendant in a mint-coloured tunic gives you a thumbs up without breaking eye contact. Reassuring, vaguely, you climb in. Immediately, your body sinks into a perfect embrace, soft but supportive, like a loving but sarcastic grandmother. The silk is surprisingly cool, and the whole hammock rocks gently with your movements. Above you, banana leaves sway like ceiling fans. Bees hum over basil nearby. One of the hammocks creaks rhythmically as someone somewhere sighs in harmony with a breeze. And that's when you realise you're not going anywhere for a while. Your limbs grow heavy. The sling of the fabric holds you like a lullaby. You close your eyes, not to sleep, not yet, but to listen. The garden is full of noise, but none of it is loud. There's a trickle of water from a nearby channel, the dry flick of palm fronds in the breeze, and distant bird calls that may or may not be part of a local avian gossip ring. Somewhere below, two gardeners are debating something. I told you, it's a medicinal fig. It's a rotting fig. No, see the skin? That's a sign of potency. That's a sign of botulism. The debate continues. You let it wash over you. People will be arguing about figs long after you're gone. You shift slightly in your hammock, the silk whispering beneath your back. A little hummingbird darts over your face, pauses, and then zips off again, like it had a better appointment elsewhere. A moment later, something lightly plonks onto your stomach. You open one eye. It's a tiny flower crown. You look around. No one's near enough to have tossed it, and the overhead vines don't appear especially crafty. You set it gently on your head anyway. A subtle breeze passes through. Somewhere, a flute giggles. You're sinking further now, thoughts drifting like silt in a slow stream. Everything feels distant and fuzzy around the edges. The clouds above move slowly, tracing patterns you're sure must mean something if you just had a little more energy to interpret them. Your mind drifts to the stories of this place, built, they say, for love, for Queen Amitis, who missed her forested homeland too much to bear the flat, dry plains of Babylon. So Nebuchadnezzar built her a mountain of green, or did he? Scholars still debate it endlessly. Some say the whole story is misattributed or entirely fabricated by Greek historians who wouldn't know a hydraulic system from a garden hose. Others suggest the real hanging gardens were in Nineveh, commissioned by Sennacherib, whose name sounds like someone sneezing into a scroll. But what if it doesn't matter? You open one eye again. A butterfly is perched on your toe, gently flexing its wings like it's doing tiny yoga. You close your eye. You're not moving, not for anything. Nearby, someone begins to recite something. A woman's voice this time, soft, melodic, repeating a Sumerian prayer under her breath. You can't translate it, but you don't need to. The cadence is enough. The vowels roll like water over stone. The silence between the words is part of the rhythm. It's unclear how long you drift like that. The day moves gently overhead. Sunlight slants through the canopy, dappling your face and arms in moving patches of gold. Every now and then, someone passes nearby, quiet, unhurried. A child hums a tune about a flower with too many legs. A young couple giggles as they tiptoe past, one of them clearly holding a stolen fig. The fig's fate is unknown. You drift. Thoughts rise and fall like the garden's breath. One in particular loops in your mind. The garden doesn't ask you to solve it. It just asks you to stay a while. It's probably something Scylla would say, or Enhet, or the figure. You're startled by the sudden thump of footsteps near your hammock. You crack an eye open. A palace messenger is standing nearby, awkwardly holding a scroll, and looking like he was hoping you'd stay asleep longer. He catches your eye, clears his throat, and places the scroll beside you. "Not urgent," he whispers. "It's mostly poems and a questionable recipe for cucumber beer." He leaves. You don't even reach for the scroll. Not yet. You yawn. The sound seems to echo in the silk. You're somewhere between sleep and waking now, drifting. Just before you finally slip under, you hear a final sound, a flute rising and falling with the wind, and a voice, faint but familiar. "Nap well," it says. "The garden's still here when you're ready to open your eyes again." You wake slowly, not because someone's calling your name, or because a trumpet's blasting from the temple tower, but because a breeze tickles your nose, carrying the faint scent of cumin, sandalwood, and what you'd bet your last fig cake is cinnamon-spiced almonds. You blink your eyes open to see a shaft of afternoon light slicing through the canopy above. It's golden, almost syrupy, and dances lazily with the shifting leaves. The garden has shifted too. Where earlier it was soft and sleepy, now it hums with a subtle new energy. Still peaceful, but with an undertone of movement. Anticipation. Your hammock creaks softly as you sit up. Someone has left a folded linen cloth over your chest like a makeshift blanket. You suspect Enhet. Or the banana tree. This place has a strange sense of humour. You slip your feet into your sandals and stretch your arms wide. There's a pleasant soreness in your limbs, like your muscles just returned from a particularly intense dream, and then your stomach gurgles again. Of course. A narrow stairway leads you down from the hammock grove, winding between planters of wild mint and creeping thyme. You trail your fingers along the rail, warm stone beneath calloused fingertips, and head toward the lower levels, where you remember spotting what looked suspiciously like a market tucked into the edges of the garden. And sure enough, there it is. The transition is gradual. Birdsong gives way to the gentle clatter of pottery and the low murmur of voices. You round a corner, and suddenly you're in the garden's bazaar. Not the massive city-wide market down by the Ishtar Gate. No, this is a quieter, more intimate sprawl. A market built into the very roots of the hanging gardens. Stalls spill out beneath pergolas and trailing vines, woven mats laid across the stone, and strings of clay bells tinkle in the breeze. Everywhere you look, colour, texture, and the faint scent of roasting nuts. The merchants don't shout like they do in the main city. Here, they simply exist, calm and confident, their wares speaking for them. A woman with ink-stained hands is selling scrolls rolled in perfumed cloth. You pass by and catch a few titles. Poem to a slightly disappointing god. Recipe for fig porridge that doesn't betray you. And one simply titled, "This is about my ex. Don't read it." Next to her, a pair of twins are selling tiny clay dolls, painted in vivid reds and blues, each one slightly askew in posture, like it's been mid-dance for 3,000 years. One has a crooked grin and a spear made of toothpick. Another rides a chariot pulled by what looks suspiciously like a chicken. You buy it immediately. The vendor nods solemnly. That one dreams of becoming a god. Further on, baskets overflow with herbs and spices, turmeric, coriander, star anise, dried rose petals, long black sticks of cinnamon curled like ancient scrolls. A nearby vendor holds up a small bowl of something dark and lumpy. "Try this," she says. You hesitate. "What is it?" "Candied eggplant," she says proudly. You pause. "That feels illegal," she shrugs. "So does love. Taste it anyway." You do. It's good, confusing but good, sweet, chewy, with a faint tang that makes your jaw twitch. A cat strolls past your ankles with the confidence of someone who owns everything. Its fur is dappled and its eyes ancient. It pauses just long enough to flick its tail against your leg, like a brushstroke, before disappearing under a table of papyrus fans. You're left wondering if it blessed you or cursed you. And then you spot it. A food cart set against a trellis, wrapped in blooming jasmine. Steam rises from a clay pot at its centre, and seated behind it is a woman stirring with a long ladle carved from olive wood. She glances up and grins. "Hungry?" You nod. She ladles a generous portion of barley stew into a shallow bowl, thick and fragrant, with bits of date and shredded lamb floating alongside plump lentils and slices of boiled radish. She hands it over with a square of flatbread and a wink. "Made with love," she says, "and possibly by accident." You sit nearby on a low bench shaded by grape leaves, dipping your bread into the stew. It's hearty, savoury, and just sweet enough to make you feel like maybe you have earned a third meal today. A few musicians gather near the centre of the market, one plucking a stringed instrument shaped like a lyre, another tapping a hand drum softly. The music starts slow and lazy, then picks up slightly, like the garden itself is stretching after its nap. You finish your meal and rise to wander once more. One stall is entirely devoted to ornamental combs, carved from bone, shell, and even coloured glass. Another sells sandals dyed with crushed berries and embroidered with little stitched animals. A third sells nothing, just an old man sitting on a stool, sipping tea, offering no wares. Just watching. You raise an eyebrow as you pass. He raises one back. Fair. You pause at a final booth where a young girl is painting clay discs with vibrant pigments, sun motifs, spirals, symbols you vaguely recognise from temple murals. She glances up. "Choose one," she says, "whichever calls to you." You point to a disc painted with a stylised flower. 12 petals, one curled inward. She nods, ties it to a cord, and slips it over your neck. "For memory," she says, "so you don't forget this place when the dust comes." You want to ask her what that means, but she's already back to painting. As you step away from the market, your arms are heavier with tokens. A doll, a charm, a belly full of stew, and possibly cursed eggplant. The light is beginning to tilt, casting long golden shadows across the stone. The market begins to quiet, and you, slightly dazed, deeply full, and carrying just enough absurdity in your pockets, begin the slow walk back toward the heart of the garden. The cat reappears one last time. This time it winks. You wink back, because of course you do. You wander back through a narrow passage, shrouded in flowering vines, still tracing the outline of the painted charm at your neck with your thumb. The market's fading sounds give way to a new kind of hush. Not silence exactly, but something softer, more reverent. You're not sure where your feet are taking you, But the garden seems to part for you, ushering you along gently, like a polite but persistent host. Then you see it. A curtain of hanging leaves parts to reveal a gate. Not a massive one. Not the towering lion-adorned sort they paint on Babylonian postcards, but a delicate arch of smooth stone wrapped in jasmine vines, flanked by fig trees just beginning to fruit. And beside it, an old woman stands with her arms crossed, leaning casually on a carved staff that looks suspiciously like it used to be a shepherd's crook. "You're either lost or lucky," she says. You nod. "Little of both?" She huffs a laugh, then gestures behind her. "Well, you're here now." You step through the archway into what must be the most hidden space in the entire garden. It's smaller than the other terraces, tucked neatly into the curve of a crescent wall, but lush beyond reason. Flowers bloom in thick, sweeping arcs, lilies, hyacinths, flame-coloured lotuses, vines with blossoms shaped like teardrops and stars. A soft mist hangs in the air, rising gently from the soil, like the garden itself is sighing in contentment. And then you notice it, barely audible at first. Music. It's not coming from musicians you can see. It's everywhere. Strings, soft and clear, layered with the occasional breath of a flute. The sound seems woven into the plants themselves, resonating in the stems and petals, humming quietly beneath your skin. "The Queen's Garden," the old woman says, walking beside you now. Private, mostly, but she likes to share it when she's in a good mood, which is more often than people expect. "Queen Amytis, you ask?" She nods. "If the stories are true, and if they aren't," she grins, "then someone else deserves credit for all this. Either way, it's hers." You step onto a path paved with smooth round stones, set in spiral patterns. Every so often, a bird calls out from the foliage, exotic ones, with colours that make parrots look modest. A few flit between the vines, calling back and forth as though arguing over tempo. You pass under a bower where the string music swells, and for a brief moment you could swear the flowers nearest the source sway slightly in rhythm. There's no visible instrument, no hands plucking strings, just melody and bloom, somehow linked. The old woman, who still hasn't given her name by the way, taps her staff gently against a low wooden bench. You sit. She doesn't, just leans and watches the space like it's something she planted herself. "They say Amytis missed the green hills of Media," she says, "so Nebuchadnezzar brought them to her. Not the hills themselves, mind you, just the feeling." She picks a flower from a nearby bush, something golden and soft, and tucks it behind your ear like she's known you forever. "People think love is loud," she says, "but this was the quiet kind." You sit in silence for a moment, just breathing. The garden smells of everything all at once. Jasmine, sandalwood, basil, lemon balm, and some mysterious undertone that might be ancient moonlight. "Did she really live here?" you ask. The old woman shrugs. "No one knows. Some say she hated it, too damp. Others say she never left, that when she died she became part of it, that when the jasmine blooms at night, it's her breath." "Do you believe that?" She tilts her head. "I believe things that feel good to believe. It keeps the flowers blooming." Fair. She reaches into the folds of her robe and pulls out a small object, an ivory comb, carved with twin lions curled around a sun. She hands it to you. "Her favourite," she says, "or maybe mine. Hard to tell these days." You hold it carefully. The teeth are still sharp. The carving, worn smooth by time and handling, feels alive in your palm. "Keep it," she says. "It'll remind you how to untangle things." Before you can thank her, she's already walking away, vanishing between two hedges of flowering myrtle, like she was never there at all. You're alone again, or at least it feels that way. You stand and begin exploring the garden on your own, weaving through curved paths and rounded archways lined with flowers that open as you pass, their petals curling outward to meet the sun. A small stream trickles through the centre, crossing under little footbridges of woven wood and polished stone. You pause at one, watching fish dart through the clear water, bright orange, red, even a few that shimmer like metal. The music continues, soft and ever-changing. You hum with it now, unconsciously. The tune finds its way into your step, your breath. You realise that somewhere between the stew, the hammock, and the stolen flower crown, you've become part of the garden's rhythm. And then you reach a clearing, a circular glade surrounded by pale-leafed trees and towering white lilies. At its centre stands a sculpture, a woman in profile, her robe sculpted to look like wind-tossed vines. Her hands are raised, cupping a single blossom carved from rose quartz. A small plaque at her feet reads, "Amitis, if not in name, then in spirit." No dates, no claims, just reverence. You sit beneath the sculpture, watching a breeze stir the tall grass at its base. A few petals tumble lazily through the air, landing in your lap. You let them stay, and for just a moment, the entire world is a breath, a soft note, a bloom. You leave the Queen's garden behind with slow steps and a quiet mind, as if the vines are politely encouraging you onward. The music fades gently as you descend another shaded stair, the stone warm now from the steady press of the afternoon sun. The garden seems to change again, still vibrant, still green, but heavier with scent, heat, and something else. Anticipation. You step into a long open corridor between terraces just as a cool, sudden mist sprays across your face. You freeze. Above you, a wooden sluice groans faintly as water begins to trickle through carved channels and crevices. Moments later, another spritz, gentler this time, like the garden itself just sighed. A light wind carries the droplets outward, and within seconds the entire terrace is enveloped in a shimmering curtain of cool, misty rain. You laugh out loud, caught off guard. A few other garden-goers appear around you, laughing too, arms raised to the sky like surprised children. A pair of attendants hurry past with buckets, rerouting flow from an upper terrace, calling over their shoulders, "Sorry!" The aqueduct's being dramatic again. Water spills from the upper tiers, running in graceful arcs down the walls, catching the sunlight and flaring into fleeting rainbows. It's not a storm, it's a performance. You raise your arms and let it soak into your sleeves, your hair. The sudden coolness kisses the back of your neck and clings to your eyelashes. The vines, the walls, even the statues seem to welcome it, leaves perking up, like they've been holding their breath since breakfast. It doesn't last long, just a few blissful minutes, but when it fades, the garden is transformed. The air smells richer, soil, citrus, blossoms, wet stone. The mist lifts slowly, and in its wake the light seems softer, almost painted. A nearby hibiscus unfurls a new bloom as you watch. You could swear the petals stretch just a little wider, like they know they're being admired. A few paces ahead, a girl kneels at the base of a column, giggling as she catches the last drops in a clay bowl. She lifts it above her head like a trophy. "For the frogs!" she declares. Sure enough, a trio of fat, satisfied-looking frogs are perched on a low stone ledge nearby, basking in the moisture, with smug little expressions that suggest this entire hydroengineering miracle was for them. Honestly, you're not convinced they're wrong. One croaks with perfect comedic timing. You move on. Further along the path, a wide basin has filled with runoff, now a mirror-flat pool reflecting the sky above. You lean over it and stare at your reflection. Damp hair, glowing skin, petals stuck to your sleeve, a small smile you didn't realise was there. For a moment, you don't look like someone visiting a ruin or touring a historical theory. You look like you belong here. A few steps later, you come across a group of garden workers, kneeling in the soaked earth, rerouting narrow channels. With polished clay tiles, one of them waves you over. "You want to see something cursed?" he asks. There's no good reason to say yes, but of course you do. He lifts a stone slab and reveals a small figurine buried halfway in the mud. A tiny monkey holding what looks like a water jug and wearing a crown of carved grapes. Its smile is mischievous, its eyes untrustworthy. "We found this in the runoff pipe this morning," the worker says. "Blocked the entire third terrace." "What is it?" "Unclear. We're blaming it for everything." You nod solemnly. "Seems fair." As you move on, you pass another mural set into a curved garden wall, this one depicting a team of men and women working a massive wooden wheel with clay jars tied along its edge. A pulley system beside it lifts buckets of water skyward, pouring into troughs at the top of the image. There's even a goat watching, looking vaguely concerned. It's not high art, but it's strangely moving. This might be what people forget about the Hanging Gardens. Beneath the petals and poetry, it was a machine. A living, breathing, sweating, splashing system of gears, gravity, and elbow grease. Historians still argue whether these systems used an early version of the Archimedean screw or chain pumps operated by treadmills and counterweights. Some ancient descriptions credit hidden forces lifting water from the Euphrates, which you now suspect was either literal engineering or frogs with an overdeveloped sense of self-worth. You wander into a covered corridor where water still drips softly from overhead vines. The stone beneath your feet is etched with channels guiding the runoff toward deeper cisterns. Every few meters, small carved creatures mark the way, stylized turtles, river fish, and one very round otter holding what appears to be a martini glass. You step out the other side into a grove of olive trees, their silver-green leaves shimmering in the filtered light. Small ladders lean against their trunks, and hanging jars sway gently from the branches, collecting rainwater drop by drop. "Bonus water," says a nearby gardener as he walks past. "We call it sky tax." You pluck an olive from one of the lower branches and immediately regret it. Too bitter. The gardener nods approvingly. "Raw? Terrible? Fermented in brine for 3 moons? Transcendent." You pass by a few others collecting petals that have fallen during the misting, some for perfume, others for offerings. One woman hums as she works, her arms streaked with pollen. You stop to admire her baskets, one filled with white rose petals, one with crimson hibiscus, and a third full of what looks like melon rinds. "Compost," she says, "for the angry papayas." Angry. They hold grudges, you continue on. As the terrace opens again, you find yourself back near the edge, where vines hang in elegant drapes over the balustrade. The city beyond glows golden now, its rooftops steaming lightly in the late afternoon sun. You see the Euphrates sparkling in the distance, and you think again about water, how it climbs these heights, how it trickles, mists, rushes, and soothes. The Hanging Gardens might have been built for love, but they run on plumbing. You breathe in the rich scent of wet stone and sun-warmed greenery. Somewhere, a monkey shrieks with delight, or protest, hard to say. You laugh and wipe the damp from your arms with your sleeve. The garden cools again, and you walk on, lighter than before. You follow a side path now, narrow, almost hidden, tucked between a pair of stone walls, wrapped in tight coils of ivy. A wooden gate creaks as you nudge it open, revealing a quiet courtyard, shaded and still. It's the kind of place that feels paused, like time stopped here to rest its feet for a while. In the centre stands a low circular platform. Surrounding it, dozens of clay tablets laid out on polished stone shelves, nestled under overhangs to keep off the rain or spontaneous garden misting events. A few sit in tidy stacks. Others sprawl like the writer just wandered off mid-thought. A boy, barely 13 if that, is hunched over one of them, stylus in hand. His tongue pokes slightly from the corner of his mouth in intense concentration. Every now and then he mutters something, taps the stylus, and scrapes away a line with the edge of a shell. He doesn't notice you until your sandal scrapes against the stone. Then he jumps, stylus flying out of his hand, and landing squarely on his own foot. Gah! You wince as the stylus rolls dramatically off his toe. Do you need help? He shakes his head furiously, though he's clearly about to cry. Then, sniffing back all dignity, he retrieves the stylus with the solemnity of a philosopher who's just lost a debate. I'm fine, he says, in the ancient tone of every embarrassed apprentice throughout history. This one was nearly perfect. He gestures toward a still-drying tablet nearby. You glance down and see a series of wedge-shaped marks, tight, meticulous, and apparently meant to read something like, "On this day, the rains blessed the papyrus, and the frogs held council near the lemon trees." You blink. That's oddly beautiful. He shrugs. It's for the garden archive. We're required to record at least one poetic observation per day, even if it's about frogs. You step closer, studying the other tablets. Some are inscribed in elegant lines of cuneiform, while others are more chaotic, probably student drafts, or the Mesopotamian equivalent of doodling in the margins. One has a whole paragraph scratched out and replaced with the word Ug each in giant wedges. Is this, you pause, looking around, like an official library? He perks up now, clearly relieved to talk about something that doesn't involve dropped styluses or stubbed toes. It's part of the Temple of Nisaba, he says, but this annex is just for garden logs and poetic chronicles. The rest is stored in the Ziggurat archive, boring stuff, ledgers, grain counts, goat births, scribal drama. You laugh. There's drama? He nods with grave intensity. Always. He leads you past the rows of tablets to a corner shelf, where the clay is darker, freshly fired. These ones are dream records, he explains. The priestesses sometimes ask us to write them down, after moon feasts. Most make no sense. You squint at one. The banana tree spoke to me in the voice of my uncle. He said to trust no one with more than 3 birds. I feel like that's good advice, you murmur. He hands you a stylus and a blank slab of soft clay. Want to try? You pause, then sit cross-legged beside him. The clay is cool to the touch, firm but yielding. You press the stylus in, unsure at first. The boy watches, offering the occasional tip. Angle steeper. Don't drag. Think of it like pecking a very polite chicken. You manage a short phrase. Something about water, flowers, and the smell of stone after rain. He reads it, nods once, then places it carefully on a shelf. Good. Very garden core. You glance around again. The courtyard is starting to fill with golden light, the late afternoon sun pouring in over the walls. A few more students wander in, some stretching, others carrying bowls of water or half-formed tablets. One girl balances a basket on her head filled with tiny sun-baked clay scraps. Mistakes, no doubt, destined to be reworked or crushed and reused. Do you ever worry it'll all disappear? You ask, motioning to the tablets. He shrugs again. Sometimes, but that's why we write things down. Even if no one ever reads them, the words lived once. Then, as if realizing he's just said something profound, he immediately tries to undercut it. Besides, half of this is just frog poetry anyway. You grin. The boy turns back to his original tablet, carefully pressing in another line. He doesn't look up when he says, "You should take one with you." You blink. A tablet? He nods toward a small rectangular one, stacked near the entrance. That one's already baked. The priestess made it this morning. It's a blessing tablet. You just keep it with you. You pick it up. The surface is smooth, slightly chipped in the corner. The inscription is simple, elegant, 4 lines in neat cuneiform. You can't read it, but when you tilt it in the light, the marks seem to shimmer, just slightly. What does it say? The boy grins. Roughly, may your path curve gently. May your figs be sweet. May your enemies stub their toes in sandals too tight. You laugh. That's oddly practical, he shrugs. We're a practical people. You stand, thanking him. He waves without looking up. already halfway through a new line. As you leave the courtyard, you tuck the little tablet into your belt pouch, where it nestles beside the flower charm, the clay doll, and what you now suspect is a slightly sentient almond. The air outside is cooler now. The garden stretches ahead in long shadows and golden light, and somewhere back behind you, another stylus clatters to the ground. "Ow, not again," you smile. The words are safe, the frogs too. You step back into the open paths of the garden just as the light begins to turn the colour of old gold. It spills through the leaves, in long beams now, striking petals, water, and skin in equal, tender measure. Everything looks gilded, like the garden has quietly put on its royal robe for the evening. And then you hear it, music, not just the faint drifting kind that seems to hide in the trees, but a full ensemble. Flutes, lutes, finger cymbals, and that rich, velvety hum of voices warming up in harmony. You follow the sound around a bend in the path where the stone widens into a circular terrace, shaded by a lattice of grapevines and climbing roses. A group of musicians has gathered there, half sitting, half lounging around a low platform built into the centre of the stone. They play with the relaxed confidence of people who have nothing to prove. A woman plucks at a lyre that looks older than you, the polished wood worn to a shine by years of stories. A man beside her hums a soft counterpoint while flicking the edge of a flute with his fingers, warming it with his breath. There's no audience, not in the formal sense, just you, a few scattered garden wanderers, and one of the sacred geese who seems to be nodding along in time. It's either moved by the music or plotting the percussionist's downfall. Jury's still out. You take a seat near the edge of the platform, cross-legged on a warm patch of stone. Someone passes you a small cup of something cool and purple, likely fermented grape juice or some mild date wine, and you sip as the music winds itself around your senses. The song changes, slower now, a lullaby maybe, or a memory dressed as melody. A woman begins to sing. Her voice is low, husky, like it's walked barefoot through dust storms, and still smells faintly of cedar smoke. You don't understand the words, Akkadian maybe, or even something older, but you feel them settle in your chest. You hear longing and joy and something like homesickness for a place that never quite existed the way you remember it. As she sings, the light shifts. The sun slips just beneath the terrace's edge, and for a heartbeat, everything glows. The walls blush rose gold, the vines turn copper, and even the frogs, yes, there are frogs again, seem briefly reverent. The musicians lean into the glow, fingers moving with practiced ease. The lute player closes his eyes. The flutist sways. The goose honks once softly, like punctuation. It's hypnotic. You notice others sitting nearby now, more guests of the garden. Some you've seen before, the girl with the painted discs, the elderly gardener muttering at his orchids, a palace scribe nibbling at a date cake. No one speaks, no one needs to. The music carries everything that words would only fumble. You lie back slowly, letting the stone beneath you press gently into your shoulder blades. Overhead, the vines rustle softly, blossoms catching the last of the light. The sky, framed by green, is turning pale orange, streaked with violet. Someone nearby starts tapping a rhythm. Soft, organic, just fingers on stone. It catches on, and soon a quiet, percussive beat joins the music. It's not planned, it's just happening. The way laughter catches around a dinner table, or rain begins without warning. The flute rises again, climbing higher, clearer, then fades. The voices hum low once more, and then silence, not sudden, not jarring. Just a sigh, the kind that happens at the end of a perfect story. You sit up slowly, blinking. A woman near you says, "Sunset's the last song of the day. The garden sings it, not us." Then she smiles and stands, brushing flower petals from her skirt. You linger a little longer, watching the way the musicians gently begin to pack away their instruments. some wrapped in dyed cloth, others in carved wooden cases. A few of them exchange glances like old friends who've done this 100 times, maybe 1,000. The goose wanders off. Of course it does. One of the musicians, young, with palms stained violet from plucking grapes between songs, notices your presence. He walks over and offers you a small round object. It's a palm-sized clay disc etched with a series of wavy lines and 5 dots arranged in a spiral. For resonance, he says, you leave it in your room and it remembers the songs for you. Does it play them back? He grins. Only when you need them most. You tuck the disc carefully into your pouch, where it slides into place beside the frog blessing tablet, the flower charm, and the doll with the ambition of godhood. The path from the terrace leads downward, winding gently through a narrow alleyway, shaded by date palms and blooming oleander. The light dims further. Somewhere in the distance, bells chime, faint and slow, like the garden's heartbeat, slowing for the night. As you round a corner, you pass by a carved relief set into the wall. 2 figures dancing under a tree, arms raised, heads thrown back in laughter. The figures wear flowers in their hair. One holds a lyre, the other a goose. You stare at it for a long time. No, you murmur. Can't be. But you keep walking anyway. The garden now is quieter, the kind of quiet that comes after song, after story, after joy. Not empty, full, like a jar sealed and set aside for safekeeping. The vines rustle gently in the twilight breeze. You hum, just a little, just enough to remember. The evening air feels thicker now, warmer, fuller, like the garden has exhaled a long day of sun, music, and laughter into a velvet dusk. The skies melting from apricot to plum above you, stars beginning to poke through, one by one, like bashful storytellers testing the silence. You follow a low-lit path back toward the central terrace, guided now by flickering torches mounted in stone sconces. Their flames dance lazily, casting gold shadows on the walls and sending sparks upward like fireflies that lost their way. The scent in the air shifts again. Wood smoke, roasting grain, sweet wine, and something savoury enough to make your stomach wake from its contented nap. A low hum of voices ahead. Laughter. The clink of bowls and clay cups. You found the dining terrace. It's not a banquet hall. There's no polished silver or throne-length tables here. Just a broad, sunken courtyard ringed by carved benches and low tables, each one already cluttered with bowls of food, pitchers of drink, and the occasional flower placed casually in a cup like a last-minute centrepiece. People recline on cushions, some cross-legged, others flopped sideways, with the elegance of half-drunk poets. A space is open for you, as if expected. You ease into the spot, the woven mat cool beneath you, and glance around. A plate appears in front of you, as if conjured. Thick barley stew, glistening with oil, chunks of roasted squash, onions, and lentils. Beside it, slices of flatbread still steaming, stacked next to a bowl of sheep's cheese, speckled with wild herbs. Someone passes a jug your way. The cup is already there. The wine inside is dark red and smells of dates and something else. Possibly star anise, possibly something you shouldn't ask about. You sip. It's sweet, rich, and mildly rebellious. Across from you, a young man with ink-stained hands and a smug smile holds up a charred piece of bread. To the scribes, he says, who wrote poems so confusing we all had to invent religion to explain them. A few people raise cups. To gardeners, says someone else, who taught water how to climb. To the frogs, another voice shouts. You don't need to look. You know that kid from earlier's here. Someone else adds solemnly, and to whoever thought figs and goat cheese belonged on the same plate. You were so right. The toast melt into conversation. You eat slowly, savouring every bite. The barley stew is thick and fragrant, the bread crusty on the outside and soft inside. A smear of honey appears from somewhere, and someone passes roasted nuts, seasoned with garlic and salt. No one seems to be serving. Everything is shared, passed, received, like family, or something stranger, like a dinner party hosted by time itself. You lean back after your third helping. No shame, everyone else is clearly on their fourth, cradling your cup, belly warm and full. Overhead, the stars multiply. One of the musicians from earlier strums a few lazy notes nearby, and a woman with a deep laugh hums along. No words now, just sound, just warmth. Someone tosses a fig into the air and catches it behind their back. They bow to light applause. A fig bounces onto your mat. You catch it on instinct. Your turn, someone grins. You toss it up, try to repeat the move. It lands squarely in your lap. Mild applause. I blame the wine. It blames you right back, a voice says behind you. You turn. It's the gardener, the same one who insisted basil was dramatic and papayas held grudges. He's barefoot now, sleeves rolled, hands still streaked with dirt. He hands you a small plate stacked with something that looks like dates stuffed with spiced nuts and rolled in crushed flower petals. For dessert, he says, don't eat the blue one. It's decorative, mostly. You squint. He winks and disappears again. The date candies are ridiculously good. Sticky, sweet, with just enough crunch to make you suspect there's engineering involved. The blue one stares at you. You stare back. A group nearby starts debating something with increasing intensity. From the words you can catch, it's about whether a crocodile ever actually visited the Queen's garden, or if that's just a myth made up by bored scribes with poor drawing skills. Someone insists they saw a clay carving of it last week. Another claims it's actually a metaphor for ambition. A third is busy sculpting a miniature crocodile out of bread dough just to make their point. Historians still argue whether that crocodile ever existed, someone mutters. You nod. Of course they do. The torches burn lower now, casting long, soft shadows on the garden walls. People begin leaning into their cushions, stretching, murmuring. The volume dips. Someone starts plucking a new tune, and this one's slower, more melancholy. A farewell kind of song, but not a sad one. You look down at your plate, empty. The bread's gone, the wine's almost gone. You feel full but not heavy, tired but in the best possible way, like your body has finally caught up to your heart. Someone nearby raises a final toast, this one quieter. To the day we lived, they say, and the stories it left behind. No clinking cups this time, just murmured agreement. The fig on your mat rolls softly onto its side. You rise, stretch, and step back into the path. The light now, a gentle golden hush. Behind you, voices fade. The music softens, and ahead of you, night begins to bloom. The garden shifts once again, as if drawing a soft curtain across the day. Dusk has settled fully now, with shadows stretching longer than the paths themselves. The torches behind you flicker like whispering fire spirits, and ahead, the garden welcomes you with a new rhythm, quieter, slower, deeply fragrant. The temperature has dropped ever so slightly, just enough to raise a tingle on your arms. The stone underfoot feels cooler too, smoothed by time and dew, and the footprints of every wandering soul before you. You round a bend lined with myrrh bushes, and suddenly catch a scent that stops you in your tracks. Jasmine, not the subtle kind you smelled earlier, hidden in the background, like shy poetry. No, this is bold, alive, electric. You follow your nose. It leads you to a terraced grove, where the world has turned soft and silver. Moonlight begins to peek from behind the garden walls, and under its glow, the night flowers are waking. You step slowly into the grove, careful not to disturb whatever sacred thing is unfolding here. The plants are different in this part of the garden, taller, darker, with leaves that shine like silk and buds that twitch open only in the hush of evening. A trumpet flower uncurls beside you with a faint pop. You glance down and watch a bloom unfold in real time, slow, deliberate, like a yawn, white petals with deep purple edges. The scent hits you a beat later, spicy and sweet, somewhere between honeysuckle and mischief. You breathe in and instantly feel lighter. This grove is made entirely of moonflowers, jasmine, nicotiana, night-blooming cereus, and a dozen others that don't exist on your mental plant list. Some hum. Literally, the vibration is faint, like a tuning fork or a lullaby trapped in a petal. Others simply glow, a bioluminescent blue along their edges, just enough to sketch gentle outlines in the darkness. You sit on a stone bench half covered in moss and watch it happen. The flowers opening, the colours shifting, the garden becoming something new, not lesser, not asleep, but redefined. From somewhere in the trees, a story drifts down. And so the goddess kissed the star, and the star fell, and where it landed, a garden grew. The voice is old and female, and definitely not speaking for the first time. You can't see her, but her tail weaves through the vines and settles into your spine. But the moon, jealous of the star's final kiss, took her light and scattered it among the jasmine. That's why it glows when no one's looking. You blink at the nearest jasmine blossom. It refuses to confirm or deny. Historians still argue whether such mythologies grew out of Babylon's temple traditions or from something older, oral tales passed down by gardeners and moon watchers long before scribes tried to trap them in clay. Either way, stories like this don't need citations. They bloom just fine on their own. You rise and walk deeper into the grove. A stone basin appears filled with still water. Petals float on the surface, white, yellow, violet, and a deep wine red you've never seen before. They form concentric circles, unmoving despite the breeze. You lean closer, expecting your reflection. You don't see it. Instead, the basin shows the moon, crisp, bright, and somehow closer than it should be. You glance up. Same moon, but the one in the water looks friendlier, like it knows something. You walk on. A soft scuffle in the underbrush, a low whistle, and then, emerging with a rustle of leaves and an exaggerated blink, your friend the monkey, the same one from breakfast, unmistakable thanks to its bejewelled collar and the general air of petty royalty. It stares at you. You stare back. It gestures, vaguely, dramatically, toward a path lit by faintly glowing flowers. Then it hops onto a branch and disappears with a dismissive flick of its tail. You shrug. Of course the monkey is your guide now. You follow. The path curves past a hedge of night phlox, its white flowers open and fragrant, throwing out perfume like it's in competition with the jasmine. The breeze carries it all toward you. Citrus, smoke, something buttery and wild. And as you reach a clearing, you realise you're not alone. Others have gathered here too, quietly, no fanfare, just people in robes, guests like you, even a few scribes still stained with ink, all standing or sitting between the flowers, watching, listening to the myths. A woman in a robe stitched with silver stars steps forward into the moonlight and begins to recite. When the fig tree spoke, it spoke not of fruit, but of memory, sweetest when shared. A few people nod. Someone nearby breathes out a soft, "Ha!" The stories continue. Some told aloud, some sung. Others whispered only to the flowers, like confessions. You find a place to sit, your back against a tree with bark like soft parchment. A flower blooms beside your shoulder, brushing your hair as if saying, "Yes, you too." One man tells a tale of a woman who loved the wind so much she married it. They had a son, he says. His name was Dust. He travelled the world, but always came home during storms. Another recites a prayer meant to coax reluctant blossoms open. Moon above, leaf below. Kiss her gently, and let her go. The night flowers around him shiver, just slightly. Eventually a child is called forward. She's tiny, swaddled in an oversized tunic, and holds a glowing stone in one hand. She clears her throat dramatically and announces, This is the story of the owl who couldn't sleep because the frogs were too loud. Applause. The frogs croak on cue. You don't know how long you stay there. Time dissolves. You listen. You laugh. You rest your cheek against your knees. At some point, someone places a cup of chilled tea beside you, perfumed with jasmine and melon. You sip, and the flavour carries every tale told tonight. The garden is no longer green. It's silver, blue, violet, star-touched. And in this place of fragrant myths and blooming moonlight, you feel something gentle and ancient settle over your shoulders, like a shawl woven from dream. You're not just hearing stories now. You're becoming one. You follow the scent of myrrh and the hush of shifting leaves, drawn now to something quieter, deeper. The laughter of the moonlit storytelling circle fades behind you, but its echo lingers like perfume on your sleeves. Your steps grow slower, not from tiredness, but reverence. The air feels different here, thinner, crisper, as though the garden itself is holding its breath. Then you see it, a narrow staircase carved directly into the slope of the upper terrace, flanked by walls of stone etched with symbols you don't recognise. They shimmer faintly under the stars. This isn't a part of the garden open to everyone. You didn't even notice it before, but now the path reveals itself. Of course it does. You descend. The walls curve inward, narrowing your view until the sky disappears above you. The scent of incense grows stronger, frankincense, pine resin, and something sharp, like crushed metal or starlight. At the base of the steps, the passage widens again, opening into a circular chamber, enclosed by stone and silence. You have arrived at the Star Temple. No one greets you, no one needs to. The ceiling here is open, just a round hole, framed by thick stone arches through which the stars peer like curious guests. You tilt your head back and feel the garden fall away behind you. Above, a vast sky, impossibly clear. Below, a space where time folds in on itself, like a piece of papyrus. A few others sit or kneel at low stone benches carved into the chamber walls. There are scrolls laid out here, bowls of ink and tablets, star charts scratched into bronze plates, and fragile glass spheres that glint with captured light. At the centre of the temple, a raised platform displays an enormous bronze ring suspended above a polished black disc. The ring is etched with markings, phases, signs, cycles. You recognise some of them. Stars, planets, crescents. Others are older, sharper. Shapes that feel like they were invented before the idea of day. You approach slowly. A low voice breaks the stillness. Careful. That ring has outstared 3 kings. You turn. A priest stands nearby, hood pulled back, hair braided with silver threads. Her eyes glint like obsidian. Her hands are stained with ink, chalk and starlight. New, she asks. You nod. She gestures to the bronze ring. Jupiter's there tonight, nearly at opposition. Saturn's just being difficult as usual. She moves to the edge of the disc and places both palms against the stone, murmuring something in a language older than the garden. The bronze ring shifts with a soft click, aligning slowly until one of the symbols points directly to the opening in the ceiling. A shaft of starlight slides through the ring and lands directly on a polished obsidian bowl at the platform's centre. See, she says. There he is, bright and pompous. You look. The light reflects off the obsidian like liquid silver. A pinpoint star glows at its heart. It pulses once, as if it knows it's being watched. They used to say Jupiter was the chariot of Marduk, she continues, circling the ring. Pulled across the heavens by divine bulls, she pauses. Now we know it's gas and gravity. Doesn't make it any less beautiful. You glance around the room again. Scrolls line the walls, most of them open to messy diagrams. Circles and triangles, strange spirals, starbursts. Some are covered in both numbers and drawings. Comets, eclipses, odd-shaped moons with labelled smirks. One scroll is just a list of animals and datas. You raise an eyebrow. That's our frog-based weather calendar, the priest says without blinking. Shockingly accurate. You nod solemnly. Of course it is. She moves to a low table where a glass orb sits in a copper stand. Inside it swirls a silvery mist that never settles. This, she says, is just for drama. You appreciate the honesty. There's a hush again, and for a while you simply sit beside the great ring, watching the stars filter down through the ceiling. The sounds of the garden are gone. No birds, no flutes, not even frogs. Just the occasional creak of the ring turning, the soft breath of another visitor marvelling in silence. You lie back against the cool stone floor, feeling its ancient chill seep into your spine. The night sky above feels endless, like it might bend down at any moment and kiss your forehead. Somewhere nearby, two apprentice priests are arguing in whispers. Venus rose before sunrise last month. It rose at dawn. I charted it. You guessed. I predicted. Same thing. Exactly. You smile. Even here, among ancient wonders and divine geometry, the human spirit persists. Mildly arrogant and deeply nerdy. You glance toward a shelf of clay tablets and recognize the marks from earlier. Sumerian star charts, scribbled in rows. Symbols for Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and something labelled simply, the Wanderer. Uranus, you whisper. The priest leans in. We don't talk about Uranus here, not after the incident. You decide not to press further. Instead, you return your gaze to the stars, tracing their patterns with your eyes. The priest settles beside you and starts pointing out constellations: the lion, the plough, the fish with two tails, the dancing ox. And that, she says, is the heron. You follow her finger. I don't see it. Good, you're not supposed to. It only appears to people who've truly forgotten what they were looking for. You stare harder. Nothing. She chuckles. Come back tomorrow, or in 5 years. Maybe you'll forget better by then. The stars begin to shift, just slightly, and the ring above you lets out one last click. The light narrows, fades. The priest rises. That's our signal. The sky's changing shifts. You stay a little longer, still lying there, the cold stone beneath you, the universe above. And as the temple begins to dim, one last thought drifts through your mind. How strange and perfect it is that in the centre of a myth-soaked garden you found the stars themselves. No less mysterious than the vines, no more logical than the frogs, and just as much a part of this strange, beautiful dream. You climb the steps from the star temple slowly, one hand trailing the smooth stone wall, fingers catching on bits of moss and carved stars worn nearly smooth by time or by wonder. The garden feels different now, not unfamiliar, but quieter in a deeper way, like it knows you're approaching the end of something. The air is cooler, kissed with the smell of stone, lavender, and lingering starlight. You pass through a hedge of silver-leafed plants that sparkle faintly under the moonlight. The breeze has stilled. The frogs have stopped gossiping. Even the sacred goose, somewhere far off, seems to have finally called it a night. You walk toward the outer terrace, drawn by a soft sound. Water again, but not rushing or dripping or misting this time. Just movement, steady, calm, like breathing, and then you see it, the moon pool. A long rectangular basin, bordered with pale marble and lined with low benches carved from white limestone. Columns draped in flowering vines surround the space, and every blossom has folded in for the night. The pool's surface is glass, perfect, not a ripple. It reflects the sky so precisely that for a moment you lose track of which side is real. You sit on the edge, your reflection greets you, hair tousled, cheeks flushed, eyes a little softer than this morning. You don't smile at yourself, but you don't look away either. Somewhere off to your right, someone is walking slowly along the pool's edge, an older man in a dark robe, his pace unhurried. He hums an unfamiliar melody, something between a lullaby and a prayer. As he passes, he nods at you, like you're both regulars at this hour. Maybe you are. A small marble statue stands at the pool's centre, on a tiny island, an owl with outstretched wings, 1 foot perched on a crescent moon. Its eyes catch the torchlight and flash briefly, like it knows something you don't. You remove your sandals, dip your feet into the water. It's cool but not cold, smooth but not slippery. You swirl your toes and watch the moon shiver across the surface. It feels like the garden's version of a heartbeat, subtle, slow, steady. The benches here are empty except one, where a small clay figure rests alone. A tiny goddess maybe, or a musician. Hard to say. Her arms are folded across her chest, and someone has painted her a crooked smile. A flower, already half wilted, is tucked behind her ear. You pick her up and set her beside you. Neither of you say anything. The stars above are brighter now, and the moon has climbed high enough to cast a silver ribbon directly across the pool. It stretches from your feet to the little island, then beyond, straight through the open gate at the far end of the terrace. The moon path. You've heard of this in stories, of moonlit trails appearing just once per night, pointing to something or someone you've forgotten you lost, or were never supposed to find in the first place. You don't follow it, not yet. Instead, you lie back, your head resting on warm marble, and look up. The sky is vast but not empty. Constellations blink at you like old friends. You try to trace the heron again. Still nothing. You smile. The clay figure rests at your side, gazing up too. From a nearby corner, the familiar rustle of leaves draws your attention. A shape moves in the darkness. You sit up slightly. It's the sacred goose. Of course it is. It waddles to the edge of the pool, regards its reflection with a critical eye, and lets out a long, perfectly timed honk. The sound echoes softly, as if the garden has chosen to allow one final editorial comment from the animal kingdom. You nod respectfully. The goose nods back. Peace is declared. As it disappears into the vines again, the quiet deepens. The last of the garden's visitors trickle past behind you, one clutching a scroll, another carrying a lantern shaped like a pomegranate. No one speaks. Everyone just exists. You take a long breath and let it out slowly. Behind you, footsteps sound softly on stone. You turn your head. It's the gardener. Barefoot again, dirt under his fingernails, a bundle of herbs in one hand and a stalk of flowering sage in the other. He nods at you. Did you see the sky yet? You nod. He smiles faintly. Good. Sometimes people leave too early. He sets the sage down beside you and walks to the far end of the terrace. For a moment you think he's going to vanish again, but this time he pauses. When you go, he says, without turning around, don't forget to take the scent with you. It lasts longer than memory, then he's gone. You sit a little longer beside the moon pool, watching the sky, listening to the absence of noise, letting your heart beat slow to match the garden's. Finally you rise. You collect the small clay figure. The charm still hangs at your neck. The frog tablet waits in your pouch. Your robe smells faintly of jasmine and wood smoke and secrets. As you walk away from the pool, your damp feet leave prints on the stone, but only for a few steps. Then they vanish, dried by the warm breeze or absorbed by the marble. Either way, the garden keeps no evidence, no trail, just memory, just scent, just moonlight. You return to the highest terrace one last time, climbing now in silence, your sandals damp, your breath easy. The night air wraps around you like a familiar shawl, cool, fragrant, a little wistful. Behind you, the garden stretches out in layered shadows and glints of moonlight, alive with a gentle stillness that only comes when everyone has gone to bed and the flowers are finally allowed to whisper among themselves. Your path ends where it began, the overlook, but this time the view is new. Babylon below is a constellation in its own right, lanterns flickering along the Euphrates, rooftops bathed in moonlight, narrow streets glowing like veins of silver. The ziggurat looms like a sleeping titan, its steps catching just enough starlight to be seen, but not enough to compete with the heavens above. You rest your elbows on the cool stone railing and exhale. The city is quiet now. Only a few distant echoes drift up. Laughter, a cartwheel creaking, maybe the last of the temple bells, the pulse of a place winding down. And the garden? It hums, not audibly, not like a song, but you feel it in your chest, in the soles of your feet, in the back of your neck where jasmine still clings to your hair. The hanging gardens don't sleep. They rest. They remember. They grow. A soft step beside you. It's Enhet. She holds a shallow dish in her hands, filled with crushed herbs and oil. Without speaking, she places it on a pedestal near the railing and lights it. The flame is small, steady. It flickers gold against her cheeks. For the night, she says. You nod. She stands beside you in companionable silence, both of you watching, as a slow breeze dances through the hanging vines, brushing petals across the path, like blessings. After a moment, she speaks again. Most people think the garden was built for love. You turn to look at her. But maybe, she continues, it was built for remembering. She doesn't explain. She doesn't need to, because now you understand. The flowers, the frogs, the music and mist, the ink-stained fingers and silent stars. It's all memory, living, blooming, floating through this sacred air, like pollen. The garden doesn't store history, it becomes it. You walk with Enhet a little while longer, down a side path you hadn't noticed before. She gestures toward a narrow alcove carved into the terrace wall. There, you see a row of small cubbies, each one home to a different token. A carved bone comb, a polished stone, a shard of painted clay, a flute with one broken hole. Offerings, she says, stories too good to keep. She hands you a blank tile and a stylus. You hesitate, then press your words into the clay. Not a summary, not a journal, just a feeling. When you finish, you place it gently into an open cubby. The garden accepts it without fanfare. Enhet smiles. Now you're part of the story too. You nod, because what else can you do? You return to your path, feet softer now, not just from weariness, but from something heavier and lighter at once, a sense of completion. Just before you pass through the final archway, a breeze carries something faint to your ear. A song. The flute again, rising and falling. The same tune you heard in the hammocks, in the grove, beside the dining terrace. It wraps around you now, like a ribbon, tying the day together. One last time, you glance back. The garden shimmers. Not with magic, not with spectacle, but with memory. Yours and not yours, real and not real, dreamed and yet lived. You pass beneath the final archway, and the garden lets you go. The hanging gardens fade behind you now, but they leave a scent trailing in your wake. Jasmine and mint, sun-warmed stone, and the faint sweetness of dates and wild figs. You breathe deeply, slowly, letting it all settle into your limbs. The memory of vines brushing your skin, the softness of a silk hammock hugging your spine, the cool mist drifting across your cheeks, like a garden's exhale. It's still there somewhere, just behind your eyes. The frogs curled up under moonflowers, the scribes dreaming of stars and unruly geese, the goose probably still plotting something in the shadows. You smile. Everything slows, your heart beating now in time with the gentle pulse of the terrace fountains. Your thoughts drifting like petals across a still pond. The garden doesn't pull at you anymore. It doesn't need to. It's been tucked gently into your story now, like a pressed flower between pages. Let your arms grow heavy. Let your feet forget the stone path. Let your mind rest like a final blossom closing for the night. Because now the stars are above you, and beneath them you carry a little piece of the hanging gardens in your chest, still blooming, still glowing, still humming softly in the quiet corners of your dreams. So just lie there, let it drift, let it fade. The garden is safe, and so are you. Sweet dreams.